Get into this a little more. Man, stubbornness and self-defiance against what God wanted, then God had to intervene and cause some things to happen. So we'll get into that. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. In Genesis chapter number 10, I'm going to begin reading in verse number 1 and reading in verse number 2. It said, "Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah." Now, starting from the beginning, we've talked about the flood. We've talked about God wiping off the population of the earth. Those that survived were on the boat. They're now off of the boat. God gave them a commandment and a covenant that we talked about last week. The covenant was that I will never do this again, but here is your commandment, and that is to go and to repopulate, reseed, restart the earth, the population of the earth. And it was all done by Noah's seed. He had 3 sons. He said, "These are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood." So this is the beginning of the repopulation of the earth. And where did it begin? It began from Noah. And that was the starting point. One individual, one race, not one individual, one race that Noah, but nonetheless, that Noah was the originator and where this began for the repopulation of the earth. It went on to say, and it was after the flood, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, and Magog, and Madai, and Japheth, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Tyre. Had lots of sons. And so this is where all of this began. And then in verse number 6, it said, "And the sons of Ham, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan." And then it goes on to break down even their sons. So there was the beginning of what God had ordained and what God had ordered was that you go out and repopulate the earth. So what does that mean in general? That means that had exactly what they were supposed to and had done it as they were supposed to, then every single one of us would be relevant, right? Would be key, right? Many of us may be, and you know how that. I'm like, so in doing it, you know, everybody, we hear that saying a lot of times. We say, well, you know, everybody that lives out here, this little community is in. Well, ultimately, by God's design, it was that way. We were kindred, and we would be relevant. We were talking, we spent some time yesterday, Brother Kenny and his family and mine went up to Lazy Acres to the pumpkin patch. We walked around, you know, and Kenny and I were just looking out across the rolling hills and all, and I said, man, you know, just to sit here and look at this, and this is what I would do, and this and that and other, you know. But Kenny was talking about, you know, having something like that, take the whole family. You know, and I thought about that a little bit. I said, you know, that's what it was about. I remember talking to some of the old timers and listening, you know, they had 8 and 10 children, 12 children, you know. Why? Because there was work to be done. That's the reason why. Because there was work to be done on the farm, and there had to be hands that could perform that work, and that was the real reason why that there were so many children born into these farm families. And they did that. That was God's plan, to recover the earth with a population to do what? To worship Him. That was the whole thing from the very beginning. The only reason that God designed man in the beginning was to worship him. And even as he went back and made the commandment to go and to populate the earth again, and we've tried this one time and they've went off the rail, God has destroyed them. But now he's saying, let's do it again. Let's repopulate the earth. And it's all for the purpose of worshiping him. That's what his design was for. Now, if you noticed, I talked about Japheth and his sons, and I talked about Ham and his sons, but the one I have not talked about was Shem. In verse number 21 and verse number 22, it says, unto Shem also the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder, even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, Asher, Afrix, something, and Lud and Aram. And the reason why that Shem was separated from those was this is where the lineage was for Israel. This is where the divineness intervened, was along the children of Shem, because he had declared to do that which was right. In verse number 32, he said, these are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations in their nations. Understand what he said. They all started with Noah. They've now began to do their own thing. They're starting to have their families. They're starting to spread. The population is starting to make. But he said, these are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations in their nations. They're starting to spread out. They're starting to get out and to repopulate. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Now, there's no way I could sit here and name all the nations on the earth today. I can name some, but I would certainly forget or miss, or I'm sure I'd probably call some that are not nations as well. So I'm not going to try that. But I sit there and I think about how God designed upon the vastness of this earth for it to be populated, and for only one purpose, and that was that worship would occur to him. I look at even in our society today, I don't know, how many billion population on the earth? 30 billion or is it 3 billion? 30 billion. Or, I don't know. It's a lot. I think 30 billion. Population on the earth. Out of that population, how many of us as an entire earth are doing what we were designed for? Well, I guarantee you, we could sit here this morning and we could probably stare out the window and we could find hundreds and even thousands that are not, because you will see that we'll have our boats and our four-wheelers and our side-by-sides and our tractors and our golf carts and our go-karts and our motorcycles and all the things that we got, to do our recreation. I'm not preaching against recreation. I like it too. I got them. I do it. But I'm just saying, we can sit here today and we can watch those that are deemed to be doing those types of things rather than being in a place of worshiping God. And that's not just here in our little town. That's across the broad spectrum of the world, that even though in the beginning our design was to worship God, it's not happening. It's not happening. A small population of people are those that'll be gathered together somewhere today to worship God. And I'm thankful we're part of them. I'm thankful for that. In chapter number 11, verse number 1, down through verse number 4, It said, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. Now, that's fascinating to me, and I sit here and I think about, what if it was that way today? It would probably almost be boring, but nonetheless, it would be interesting, to say the least. If you don't think it's different, go down to Disney World. When we go to Disney World, sometimes I think those that speak English are the minority rather than the majority, because many, if not most, of the people in Disney World, lots of them are from other countries and places that come in and to enjoy Disney World, and they speak a different language. And I'm not talking about, around here we hear the Spanish dialects of the Mexican and the Guatemalan and the different dialects of Spanish language. And so we hear a lot of that. But there you hear French, you hear Italian, you hear whatever. I mean, there's tons and tons of different ones. And you hear a lot of it. But God said in the beginning, everybody was on the same playing field. They had the same abilities, the same capabilities, and the same challenge, and that was to worship Him. However, He went on to say, the whole earth was of one language and of one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. Now, what gives man the idea of doing something like this to remotely be good? It is in direct contrast of what God told them to do. God told them, spread across the land, multiply across the land. And somebody comes up with an idea and says, hey, let's don't go any further. Let's sit right here. Let's anchor ourselves here. Let's make us some brick. We've got slime for mortar. Let's build us a tower that will reach unto heaven, and we're going to just call this home. I'm reminded of another time that happened in Acts chapter 8, verse number 1. The Bible says, actually in Acts number 1, verse number 8, the Bible tells them to go you into all the nations, preaching the gospel unto all generations. But in Acts 8 and 1, guess where they were all at? They were all in Jerusalem. They had not spread out. They had not gone into every nation. They had not done what they were said. And you know what God did? God sent great turmoil amongst them, persecution. And you know what it did? It forced them to drive out into the places that He had told them to go to start with. It made them do what they were told to do to begin with. We a lot of times, and I'm guilty of it. I do it a lot. We'll tell our little one to do something, and it's why. And what's our answer? Because I said so. That's it. And you know the reason why we use that answer? Because the real truth is that sometimes we don't know. It's just because what we see it. We just said to do it. We don't know if that's a real good idea or not. But it's because I said so. And they're inquisitive. They want to know. Sometimes she'll say, but tell me why. And I'm spinning up the rats on the wheel trying to come up with a real good logical explanation as to why I said do this in the beginning, other than just because I said so. And we have those episodes that occur like that sometimes. And then there's other times that I'll say, okay, here's the reason why. Because you have to have this for X, Y, Z, or you have, and we do, okay. And then we go on, and it settles things. But I have found out that just because I say so is usually not a sufficient answer whenever I'm being asked why. Although it's the only answer that I want to give, and many times. When God tells us, God commands us and sets us up to do the things that He has designed for us to do, it's in our own interest to just do it. To do it. But we get that same mentality, just like what they did, and they say, I'm tired of traveling. I don't see any benefit in this. Let's just do it my way. And every single time, the same results occurs when God has to step onto the scene and cause us hardheads, or as I call my little knotheads, to do what He said for us to do in the beginning. But they felt like it was a great idea. We'll camp out here. We're not going to go any further. As a matter of fact, we're going to build us a tower that'll reach unto heaven, and we'll just call it home. We'll just be right here. See exactly how that works out. In verse number 4, and they said, verse number 5, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people are one. Now, this is one of those things, they were dedicated to the mission. And y'all, let me say this. If ever there was a time that we, us as the church, need to be dedicated to the mission, is today. Because everywhere we look, there is something that is trying to derail one of us or the family of God, or trying to change. I mean, it's happening all over the nation. When we're having church delegations that are and congregations that are just being ripped to shreds for standing up for truth, and then even some of those that are a part of the church rebelling against them, and I mean, you hear these stories all the time. We have got to be dedicated to the mission, and that is spread this gospel unto all nations, unto every generation. Reach those that are reachable. Let the word of God be known and stand for what is right. Stand for what's right. People are caving under pressure everywhere we look. But God came down and He seen their dedication to building the tower, and He said, they're one. Everybody is working for the cause. Everybody's busy doing what's necessary to reach the goal of building a tower unto heaven. Although it was the wrong mission, they were dedicated to it. He went on to say, the people are one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. God said that because they are dedicated to it, there is nothing that can stop them from achieving the goal of building a tower unto heaven. God said that. He said because they have set their minds to it, because they are dedicated to it, and they're all working as one individual, There is nothing that can stop them. Can I tell somebody in the church today that if we put our minds to it and we put our strength to it and we put our dedication to it, that there is still today in 2022 nothing that can stop us from reaching the goals that God has laid out before us? Nothing can stop us. We got to have that same mentality. We got to be in one mind. We got to be in one cause. And we got to know what the mission is. That's one of the things that every 2 years, I think it was, when I was with UMC, we would have to update our mission statement, make sure it was valid, make sure that we knew what the goal was. What are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to do? You know, sometimes we just go in and we do a job. We go to work and we don't know what our outcome is. Brother Sidney and I spend a lot of time looking at drawings with our new facility now, and we find those things, you know, that we say, well, maybe, yeah, it was drawn this way, but maybe that's not what we want. And we'll go back and we'll reconfigure it. It's what's called a change order. We have to go in and do some changes sometimes and to make things change. But we stay on top of the program and we look at it and we watch the progress every single day and we make sure that, because in the end, he and I both have I guess for lack of a better word, we have a mental outcome of what this place is supposed to be and how it's supposed to function and what the benefit is going to be to an entire community. And we have all of that in mind of what this thing's going to be. And if something along the process is not working right, then we have to come together and we have to figure it out and make sure it's right. But we've got the goal in mind. But if you don't know what the end goal is, then you don't even know where to start. Anything you do, you have to start with the finish in mind. Understand what I'm saying? When you start, you got to have the finish in mind. Me and my father-in-law have built a lot of furniture and things over the years and different things. And sometimes I'll have it in my head and I'll know what I want it to look like, and I'll know how I want to put it together. But if he don't know that, then he doesn't comprehend, he doesn't know what the next step is. And a lot of times we'll have to sit down and we'll draw it out on paper and we'll make sure both of us understand this is what the end goal looks like. This is what the end piece is supposed to look like. And we may make some changes in it or whatever. But you have to start knowing what the final product's going to be, or you don't even know where to start. You don't know where to begin. And that's with everything we do. When they started building this tower, their end goal was to have a tower that reached unto the heavens. They knew where they were going to stop. They knew when it was time to declare it finished and complete. So they had something to work towards. They had something to do. And God said there is nothing right now that can stop them from reaching their end goal. He said in verse number 7, he said, let us go down and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Now, boy, you talk about confusion. There is nothing more difficult than to try to relay a message to someone that doesn't speak the same language as you and I. Now, keep in mind, every one of these people were of the same race, and they were just split nations because they decided in the beginning of where they went. they're still really relatives. And now he has confounded their language to where they can't understand one another. There's nothing more difficult. We work a lot of accidents sometimes that may have people involved that don't speak an English language, and man, you try to figure out, where you're hurting, what's going on, it's hard. It is very hard. And there's a lot of guesswork involved in those kind of things. And God knew exactly what was necessary to stop the progress. Now, when I'm saying God stopped the progress, we got to keep in mind, God's stopping the progress of man from doing something that he wasn't supposed to be doing in the beginning. So it's not like God stopping something good. He's stopping what man had taken upon himself and made a determination that I think I'll just do this. And God said, that's not what I told you to do. And so God intervenes, confounds their language. Now they can't understand one another, so they don't know what to do. They don't know what the next step is. Nobody can hear or can understand one another's language. So the Lord scattered them abroad. Is that not what he said to do in the beginning? Is that not what he told them to do? Spread out, scatter across the land, replenish the earth. But yet, hard-headed us get together and make up our own way, do our own little thing, and God comes in and scatters us out again. He scattered them out abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. God had to manually do what he had verbally asked them to do in the beginning. Let me tell you what, in 2022, don't think for a second that God's going to just let us do our own little thing and get our own little way and do all of those things. He is determined that we have a goal in mind. He's determined that we achieve what he has laid out before us. And in doing that, he will step in and he will intervene. He'll scatter us if he needs to. He'll chastise us if he needs to. Sometimes he'll just wear us out if he needs to. So, if you want to know why, it's because he said so. That's why. Simply because he said so. Verse number 10. He said, these are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he begot Arphaxad 500 years and begot sons and daughters. I lost my place. Yeah, that was it, verse number 11. 500 years of replenishment throughout the earth. Sons and daughters scattered abroad, doing exactly what they were supposed to do. Now, if you go back and look at those that made up their mind to build the Tower of Babel, they were not Shem's children. Because they had determined to do what they were supposed to do in the beginning. It makes life so much easier just to do what's right. Just to do what's right. I hear people a lot of times, they say, well, they have to make up a story to cover up a story. And that's the polite way of saying that. Yeah. My problem is that I couldn't remember what my first story was. I couldn't remember that. A lot of times when we were doing investigations and things, I always write down what somebody says. If I'm talking to them, I keep notes, and And I would write down, well, this one says this, we'd write it down and go on. And just let people talk. Just let them talk and just document it. And they would talk and talk and talk. And then, but a minute, I'd catch, well, wait. Now, that's not what you said happened right here. You want me to tell you why? Because we cannot remember what we said in the beginning. A falsehood is very difficult to remember. But the truth is, you can pop it out just like that. You can remember the truth because it happened. It's established. It's something in there. That's the thing. It's so much easier just to do what's right in the beginning, and then we don't have to worry about covering up any of that stuff. We don't have to worry about remembering what this one said or that one said or any of those things. Just do what's right. God made it easy for us to accomplish His goals just by doing what He said for us to do. And then He doesn't have to go in and scatter us abroad or do something to us to cause a turmoil to get out of us what He asked of us in the very beginning. In verse number 26, chapter number 11, verse number 26, and Terah lived 70 years and begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of nativity in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abraham and Nahor took them wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, Micah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Micah, and the father of Ishkar. But Sarah was barren, she had no child. Now, we are now working into the generations of those that become relative to, we know Sarah, Abraham and Sarah, how Sarai was not able to have a child, was barren, and we know the story behind that. But all of God's plan was to just do what He said in the beginning. And that was to go forth, replenish the earth, and worship Him. Now, I'm one of those in today's world, I sort of question, bringing new children into the world in the turmoil. And I'm just saying, in the turmoil of all the things I tell people all the time, I don't really worry about what I've got to deal with, but it scares me to death to think of what my children have to deal with. And so it's a difficult place. But in today's society, the end goal is still the same as it was in God's establishment, and that was worshiping Him. Still to worship Him. Every newborn baby that'll be born into this earth today, God's desire for them was that they were born to worship. They were born to exalt Him. They were born to lift Him up. From the very beginning, I don't care what race we declare them. I don't care what nation they come from. I don't care what generation they come out of. I don't care what society that they're brought up in. God's plan for them was to worship. That's what He had planned for each and every one of us. Let's go before the Lord in prayer. Lord Jesus, we love You. We're grateful today, God, for Your word. We're thankful today, God, that Your desire for us is to worship. But God, more importantly, that You have put us in a place that we can do just that. God, that we can exalt You, that we can lift up Your name. We can call out unto You, God, and know, Lord, that You receive the praise that is offered. Pray, God, today, Lord, as we go forth, that we would do just that we would lift You up, we would exalt Your name, we would magnify You among the heavens, God, today. In Jesus' awesome and mighty name we pray. Amen.